Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This afternoon, we are sitting as Hamilton Township Council. We do have 5 members of council present. We do have quite a number of staff with us today, including our clerk's department. And I should like to call this meeting to order. I think that's going to flip over in the next 3 seconds and say 1 o'clock. And I shall start off with our land acknowledgement statement. The Township of Hamilton is situated within the traditional territory of the Mississauga, Anishinaabeg, and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. Our work on these lands respectfully acknowledges their resilience and their long-lasting contributions to the area now known as the Township of Hamilton. There is one addition to the agenda, and it happens to be the mayor going rogue. This is the first meeting of council that we've had a number of staff with us since our storms, Christmas weekend and the weekend before. And I just wanted to say on behalf of certainly council members and the ratepayers themselves of the conditions that you staff members were working within and your successes. And I'm very pleased to say that I thought an excellent job was done. And if that's inappropriate for the mayor to go rogue, I can tell you I'll be doing it again under the same circumstances. Confirmation of the council agenda. It's been circulated and there's been a correction or two to it. However, it remains intact. Could I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda for January 17th? Moved by Bruce, seconded by Mark. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 5 on our agenda. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, that shall be reported. Public question period on agenda items. Are we seeing any today? No one online or anything with us? It also shall be recorded. Presentations and delegations. Bullet point 7 on our agenda. It's to deal with the Highway 401 Nagle Road interchange study. And we do have Stantec presentation. Representatives here today. Forgive me, I don't know that we've met, so I'll have to let you introduce yourselves. Please feel free, come to the podium.
Okay, looks like we're on here. Okay, thank you, Mayor Jib and Council for providing an opportunity to provide an update on this study, the Nagle Road interchange study. My name is Greg Cook. I'm with Stantec, and we're working with the town of Cobourg and the Ministry of Transportation collaboratively on this study. So I do have a couple others with me. We have Terry Hoopstra from the town and Mohammed Wasim from the Ministry of Transportation. So you may recall that we had a public meeting. Whoops. So I believe it was in the fall of 2019. At that time, we presented a range of alternatives. We also presented a bigger study, the Highway 401 corridor study, but those 2 studies have kind of separated now because of the pandemic. We put this one on hold a little bit so that we could wait until we could come back out and do an in-person public meeting. So that's where we are now. We're just getting ready for our public meeting tomorrow evening. So today we just wanted to give you a bit of a heads up of what we're going to present at the meeting tomorrow. We just quickly want to provide some study background and go back and take a quick look at the alternatives that we presented at PIC 1, but then really focus on the preferred plan, and then some potential detours, and then just provide an overview of the consultation that's been undertaken as part of the study. So this study is focused on the Nagle Road interchange itself, but prior to this study, there's been lots of planning that's been done previously, kind of leading up to this study. Even going back into the 80s and the 90s, this area, the Nagle Road and the Danforth Road area was originally part of Hamilton Township. There was some amalgamation that happened in the 80s and 90s to really accommodate land use planning in this area and development. That led to the Cobourg East Community Secondary Plan in 2005. So this was again a community plan, a development plan that identified upwards of around 20,000 new residents and I think 3,500 new employment opportunities in this Cobourg East area. So as part of that land use planning, and because there's an increase in population in that area, and then the additional traffic that comes along with that, the need for an interchange at Nagle Road was identified as part of that previous plan. That need for an interchange was then subsequently carried forward into Town of Cobourg's official plan and Hamilton Township's official. So these are just some of the exhibits that are shown in the official plans, or in the planning documents, sorry. The two on the left are from the Town of Cobourg, and you can see on that leftmost exhibit, that red circle at the top there, that's Nagle Road and Highway 401, and that represents the future interchange. And then on the right side is the Township of Hamilton official plan, and then there's a little blow up there that shows that blue circle at Nagle Road and Highway 401 representing a future interchange. So that was the planning that's been done historically. And then the purpose of this study is really to develop that planning further. So instead of a circle on a plan, the goal of this study is to identify what the actual interchange looks like. So, what the interchange ramps look like, where they're located, and ultimately what properties are impacted and what property is required to construct the interchange in the future. But this is really still just planning. It's a planning study to identify this footprint and then protect that property through designation so that it is available for construction of the interchange in the future when needed. The study does also include an assessment of the Nagle Road Bridge. So there's kind of two parts to this. The interchange ramps are really associated with the development. And the Cobourg, or the Nagle Road Bridge, is a bridge that's owned by MTO that kind of has its own needs. It's ending it's nearing the end of its service life, rehabilitated or replaced. So there's two parts to this study. In terms of the timing of construction, just want to emphasize that the ministry or the town, there's no plans to go out and acquire property. This is driven by development, so this is a little bit unique. So as the Cobourg East community develops, there's some development happening now. There's a long-term plan to develop out that area. As those developments kind of come on stream, it's going to get to a certain point where there's going to be, a trigger to, for the need for that interchange. So developments will happen up to a certain point, and then development will not be able to happen until that interchange is constructed. And at that point, the developers will be required to go out and purchase the land for the interchange. So it's really driven by the development. And then those lands will be conveyed to the ministry. The ministry will ultimately own the interchange at the end of the day. But really just want to emphasize that it's driven by development of the Cobourg East community. In terms of the process, we are following the requirements of class environmental assessment for provincial transportation facilities. And again, because it's going to ultimately be an MTO interchange, that's the appropriate process. So just to go back to 2019 when we presented the alternatives, we did originally develop 8 alternatives. We narrowed that down to 4 that we really focused on at the last public meeting. The 2 on the top, so number 2 and number 4, are 2 different configurations that are located on existing Nagle Road. And then the 2 on the bottom, alternative 6 and 7, are 2 different interchange configurations, but the alignment of Nagle Road is shifted to the east for these alternatives. We did end up developing a bit of a hybrid alternative after the PIC. Basically, we took some part of number 2 that we liked, the north half. We took part of another configuration that we screened out for the south half, and we combined that because we saw some good opportunities for a hybrid alternative. So following the first public meeting, and even at the public meeting, we heard feedback on the alternatives. I won't go through all of the bullet points here. Hope you had a chance to review the package. But some of the main ones, I mean, there was, the cycling community was vocal about, providing opportunities or protection for cyclists across the bridge and through the interchange. And as you can imagine, a lot of the comments were related to property impacts around the interchange itself. So after that public information center, we went back and we evaluated the alternatives based on, a set of criteria, so environmental factors, engineering factors, community factors. And we did an evaluation and we selected a preferred plan. So that's what's shown here. And this is really the focus of the public meeting tomorrow evening. So this configuration, I guess, mostly resembles number 2, and I guess that hybrid alternative. So it is Nagle Road will be on its existing alignment, so no change in the alignment. It will be widened. It will require 4 kind of core lanes, and then it will include interchange ramps to provide all movements to and from Highway 401. So, from the Highway 401 East and from Highway 401 West, and then from both Nagle Road North and South, to and from the east. It might be hard to see on this exhibit here, but there is what's shown in red is kind of what we see is what's needed for the development, but there are 2 additional ramps shown, one in the southwest quadrant, one on the northwest quadrant, that could be added in the future. So one of the main drivers for the selection of this particular plan was really that it is flexible. It allows the bridge to be replaced when it needs to be replaced, and then it allows those interchange ramps to be added when that development triggers that need. This is a look at the profile of Nagle Road, so looking at it kind of from the side view. On the left would be Hamilton Township, on the right would be town of Cobourg. The black line represents going to be existing road grade there. It's about a 5% grade over Highway 401. And as part of these improvements, we would flatten that grade to about 3%, and that's the red line there. The bridge would also need to be raised a little bit. It's going to be a longer bridge to accommodate additional lanes on Highway 401 as well. But you can see that the red line is a little bit kind of smoother than the black line, the existing profile there. And then there is another dashed line in red shown there that shows what the profile would look like if just the bridge was constructed in advance of the interchange ramps. This slide shows a couple of cross sections of the bridge itself. So the top picture there, we call that phase 1. So that's what the bridge would look like if it was just kind of replaced without the interchange ramps. So if the MTO needed to replace that bridge before the development happened, they would replace a 2-lane bridge and shoulders, so similar to what's there now. But that bridge would be designed so it can be widened in the future to accommodate the additional lanes that are required for the through lanes and the ramps. And then it also includes cycling lanes, 2 1.5-meter bicycle lanes on either side, and a sidewalk on the west side. So I did talk a little bit about the kind of the flexibility or the implementation of this. So again, it can be constructed or built out in 3 phases. The first phase is the bridge replacement phase only. So that would be pretty minor impact. So basically take the old bridge out, put a new bridge in. Because it's a little higher and a little bit longer, there's some minor property impacts, but that could be done completely independently of the interchange ramps. The next phase would be aligned with the Coburg East development. So again, as that development builds out, it's going to trigger the need to construct, well, first of all, to widen the bridge and then to construct interchange ramps to accommodate the traffic. So that will really be driven by the town of Coburg and the developers. And then the third phase is a possible future phase that I mentioned with those ramps in the northwest and southwest quadrants, but there is protection for 2 additional ramps that could accommodate even more development and traffic if needed. So it's a little bit of future proofing. At this point, in terms of the bridge itself, the ministry is not quite sure, if it will be, when it will be replaced. We're looking at, rehabilitation holding strategy, but it's not certain whether that will align with the timing of the development. So there needs to be kind of a contingency plan. The ministry can go ahead independently. I mentioned, one of the bigger issues that we heard at PIC1 was property impacts. So this is a summary of the property impacts, direct impacts. And by direct impacts, we mean properties that would be acquired. So within Hamilton Township, I believe there's 4 parcels of property. There's not necessarily 4 owners, and 2 municipal properties. So there are 2 kind of municipal road allowances in the study area. And then within the town of Coburg, 8 private properties and 1 municipal. So a total of 12 private properties. Second column is the number of full buyouts or dwellings impacted. So a total of 6 in an area of about 16 hectares. So we did look at constructability of the interchange, even though it's, it's some point in the future, but to construct the bridge is going to require some detours. So the first, I guess we call it short-term detour that we identified is that 401 will need to be closed to accommodate the demolition of the existing bridge. So that will require closure of 401 between Division Street and Lyle Street, and this would likely happen overnight. So the ministry has done a lot of these demolitions where they demolish the bridge overnight. It takes between 12 and 18 hours, but basically drop the bridge on the highway, clean it up, and then have it open in the morning. So you do that kind of in off peak periods. And then during that time, Highway 401 traffic would be detoured, basically using the county road system, the EDR system. So County Road 45, County Road 22, County Road 23. There may be some additional, again, short-term closures to place girders, the new girders on top of the highway, but that will be determined in detailed design. And then Nagle Road itself will also need to be closed to accommodate construction. So, that profile that I showed you, where we're kind of cutting and filling the existing roadway, that will require the road to be closed, as well as the bridge will be demolished. So traffic will not be able to use Nagle Road to cross Highway 401 during the construction of the bridge. So the proposed detour routes will be County Road 45, Densmore Road, and Danforth Road. Again, timing or the duration will be determined in detailed design, but it could be up to 12 months that Nagle Road would need to be closed to accommodate that bridge construction. So just to wrap things up, for your own reference, in terms of formal consultation, throughout this study, There have been several public notices. There's a project website, 2 public information centers, as well as other presentations and meetings with different groups. And then in terms of stakeholders, this again, just for your reference, is kind of a list of other stakeholders that we've been meeting with and consulting with during the study. So that takes me to next steps. So there's originally we were planning to go to committee of the whole, but we didn't make that. So here we are today at council, but we also presented to Cobourg Council last night, and then we will be presenting to Northumberland County Council in February. And then, as I mentioned, we do have the Public Information Center tomorrow evening at the Community Center. So the focus will be presenting the evaluation of alternatives and the preferred plan, presenting the anticipated environmental impacts and mitigation. We are also having separate property owner meetings with the individual property owners. We had 5 of those last week, and we have 1 more, I think, this week. So that meeting is tomorrow evening between 4 and 7 at the Cobourg Community Center. We do have an external agency session at 3 o'clock, and you're certainly welcome to attend the agency meeting at 3. So we'll be all set up for the PIC, but you're welcome to come in 3 to 4. And then finally, the study will be documented in the Transportation Environmental Study Report that will be available for a 30-day public comment period in the spring. So the entire study will be documented in this consolidated report and available for review by the public. So that's all we have to present today. Again, we look forward to the PIC tomorrow and hope to see some people, including you folks out there, if that's of interest.
Thank you. I'm assuming you have a few minutes to field some questions if council members are so inclined. Larry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if I could direct a question to CAO, Dr. Anderson. If any other further discussions have been going on with MTO regarding bringing the water across at that location, in the planning stage at least. I know there's been discussions in the past, and just wanted to see if there was an update on that. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Jeb, in response to Deputy Mayor Williamson's question, I've raised it at both the previous meetings of which staff are part of this discussion about the potential of bringing water across in this location. And it is something that we've at least flagged. There's no technical or solution being proposed by Santec or by MTO at this point, or the town at this point, but it is something we've flagged as being a potential for the development of Northeast Cobourg. Is that something we could look at, extending water across to the township? So I have flagged it in that capacity, and quite a separate, we're having discussions with MTO on water and servicing it north of to the north part of 401 in other locations like back at Highway 45, but that's quite a separate discussion than the ones I flagged with them through this process.
Thank you, Arthur. Anything further, Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Arthur. I just wonder if, in discussions with Arthur's and the MTO, whether it'd be advisable to include that in your report or your plans, that the option of having water come across there, how do you do it, etc. Because I know, you've got a stage, stage 1, stage 2, and, it's going to be some time, I would think, before Cobourg's going to take the development stage, that would be engineering, et cetera, et cetera. But at least if we could start the discussion with MTO, that there could be a possibility of water, that would be great to include that in the plan.
Yeah, and just further to Arthur's comment, I think what we did agree to, Arthur, at our last meeting was to at least flag it in the report as something that the township is interested in, so that it doesn't get lost and so that it's documented. I think, yeah, there'll be further discussions required with MTO and Town of Cobourg. So.
Anything further, John? Bruce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. I noticed in the stakeholders, the list of stakeholders there, I wondered about the property owners adjacent to Nagle Road and where the interchange will be, and that they're not included as stakeholders and how this might impact them. The other thing I guess I'll ask is that I know that Nagle Road in this present shape probably isn't going to accommodate the traffic that might be created by this. Who would be responsible for rebuilding Nagle Road, especially to the north, if in fact this happens?
Yeah. Okay. Good questions. The first one, in terms of property, absolutely, they're stakeholders because we didn't list them as maybe. I thought they were on there, but maybe not as agencies per se. But we have met with all of the affected property owners, so they're well aware of the impacts of the property, including on the north side of Hamilton and the northeast quadrant. There's a property owner there in Hamilton Township that we met with. It was last Friday. In terms of Nagle Road, I mean, as part of the Cobourg East development and the traffic studies that were completed as part of that development, it is identifying, a traffic increase on Nagle Road. Obviously to the south, but also to the north. I assume it, part of that is going to be attracting traffic from the north down to this Cobourg East community. So there will need to be, and we have a county as well and had these discussions, but there will need to be future discussions and potential studies.
Thank you, Bruce. Anything further? Mark?
I just have my main concern, I guess, would come down to the timing of it. You've mentioned about it being developers kind of paying into it and buying into it and so forth. I could see that to the south of the 401, but the north side of the 401, I mean, there's not going to be any development there. So are we holding them responsible to the north? The north interchanges also, and if so, I don't even know whether we could. Can you even do that?
Yeah, so as I mean, the way we see it is as the development happens and then the town will identify or MTO will identify kind of a trigger point where the interchange is going to be needed. Then the developers will be required to purchase all the property that's required to construct the interchange. So those lands to the north will be required to construct the interchange. They may not be developed.
So just if I may ask then, is there a major development scheme there that'll allow this to be triggered? Like, is there a certain number of houses that are going to have to be developed to pay for this, or how is that? What triggers it? I guess is my question.
Terry might be best to answer, but I mean, I think I can take a stab at it. But I mean, as the developments come online, there's going to be multiple developments, but each developer or each development will be required to do different studies. So one of them will be traffic impact studies. So as each development comes online, they'll have to do a traffic impact study. They'll look at the impacts of the traffic, to the Division Street interchange. If that gets to the point where the Division Street interchange can't accommodate that traffic anymore, then that will trigger the need for the interchange on Nagle Road.
And I understand that. I'm just wondering how it's going to get paid for by the developers. I mean, as you've mentioned, I mean, there's going to be more than one developer. So how do they pay their share? And the reason I'm asking is I just want to see what our timeframes are, or give us a kind of an idea of when we can expect this to even happen. I mean, is it 10 years down the line? Is it 25 years down the line, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, just based on discussions with Terry, we think it's, the current development that's underway, could take 7-8 years to build up just kind of that first development. So it's well beyond kind of that.
So we're looking at 20 years plus kind of thing.
Yeah.
I gathered that, but I just wasn't.
Yeah, it's definitely a long-term plan. I mean, this is the planning to, protect those lands, but it's definitely a long-term.
I was just concerned that once those properties come up for sale, it's usually that's the opportune time to buy them. And it's usually done by I usually see it done by the municipalities that seem to strike to do that, but in this particular case, you're actually having the developers do that, which I'm not sure how that works, but
Yeah, and I mean, again, based on discussions with Terry, I think the way it's envisioned is that, you know, um, the developer will be required to purchase the land. Developer may not, or likely will not, construct the interchange. You know, so that will be either the town or MTO. I think those details need to be looked at further in the future, but you know, it would be collected back from the developers through development charges.
yeah, I realize that. Okay, thank you.
I have several thoughts. The first thought that most recently came to me is having a developer who's developing in the town of Coburg, paying for studies to represent the concerns, the engineering, and the solutions of ratepayers' property in Hamilton Township doesn't sit well with me. I see a lot of opportunity for failures. I go back to one of your bullet points where you said there's 4 private and 2 municipal properties affected. I think it's well beyond that. Certainly every property in Hamilton Township, which is all properties north of 401, because there's no town of Coburg north of 401. All properties along Nagle Road will be impacted. I think that adds up to more than 4 and 2. Other people in the community, in the residential community, that may see increased traffic flows, who may see road closures. They may see a lot of truck traffic going through their residential area. Some of those trucks could be carrying hazardous material. In my ledger book, would all be impacted by a decision. My question is, if developers are going to be responsible for the acquisition of land and the charges related to this, will they have an opportunity to expropriate land or will they not? Because if I'm a private landowner, I get to carry a bigger card in those 2 scenarios over the other. So my question is, will the developers that are ultimately responsible, according to your statements today, have an opportunity of expropriation?
Yeah, I'm not a property expert, but my understanding, I mean, developers don't have access to the expropriation process. So they will be required to purchase the properties, you know, through the market. So that they will need to approach property owners either as the properties come up for sale, or they can approach them, you know, as they deem necessary. But it will be a private, you know, discussion and negotiation between developer and property owners. So they don't have access. They have no mechanism to force a sale like, you know, a municipality or the ministry does.
So if I heard you correctly, all components of this interchange will be the responsibility of the developers. And that is the acquisition of land. So one landowner in Hamilton Township could step up to the plate and say, no, thank you. And this all disappears.
Yeah, the way it stands now, yeah, it'll be up to the developers to acquire property. You know, if they can't acquire property, then yeah, that's definitely going to be a hurdle that they'll have to overcome.
I think you have a big hurdle. My thoughts are correct. You have some irate property owners, and they're not limited to just along 401. They're coming north on Nagle. Your area of influence, or whatever the right terminology would be, takes in some very interesting people with some very high investments in some properties along there. And from my quick look at your map, I would say this might never occur. I was wondering if you'd actually thought about that aspect.
Well, I mean, the purpose of this study is planning, right? So the purpose of the study is to develop the plan and let everybody know, what the development plans are. So there's been, all this previous planning that's been done. This is building on the previous planning and establishing the footprint of the interchange. And, that's kind of step one. So yeah, implementation, again, that's going to be up to the developers to make that happen.
The other question I have is in respect to one of your bullet points on your feedback sheets, where it says potential increases in traffic into large trucks within the residential area is a concern. Has there been any studies even considered, let alone implemented at this point in time, of the impacts outside of the interchange area? Obviously, my interest is to the north. Outflow of traffic is really what I'm asking about. Been any studies at all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as part of this study, we're focused on the interchange, but there was a previous update to the Coburg East community traffic impact study. I think that was done in 2017.
And did it include Hamilton Township? Because when I asked before, it had.
Well, it includes kind of the limits. I mean, it does show you what the additional traffic is going to be, on Nagle Road at the north of the interchange. So
500 feet, 600 feet, 800 feet into Hamilton Township? What is it?
well, that would be, I think it's just kind of shown at the boundary. That study was done by others.
So the real answer is there's been no consideration of any outflow traffic north on Nagle, through the S Bend, down through our residential area, past our emergency service building, being a fire hall, out to 45. Am I correct?
Correct. There's been no studies on Nagle Road north of the interchange. Like I mentioned previously that those may need to be done in the future. But that traffic increase kind of at the north limit of Nagle Road would represent, what the traffic's going to be 500 feet from the interchange. So it gives you an idea of what the change will be. But in terms of impacts, at intersections and whatever along Nagle Road, no, that hasn't been done.
From my perspective, representing the people of Hamilton Township, that's critical. I emphasize critical. And it seems as though it's outside of your study requirements at this point in time, which is one of the bullet points that I brought up in 2019, and yet nothing's been done. You're impacting our municipality. You're impacting our ratepayer. You're impacting our emergency services. And yet, after 3-4 years, we still don't have a start on the study yet. That concerns me.
Yeah, understood. And that will be, something that will need to be addressed in the future.
Any idea when? Like, would it be in the too late category?
I mean, it will be done as those, developments come on stream. There'll be traffic impact studies and, those will be done through the town. But, there'll have to be ongoing discussions with obviously Hamilton Township, the county and the town of Coburg.
Well, I can't speak for council, but in my position that I sit in right now, I think you need to go back to the drawing board and reflect on my concerns for our ratepayers in this municipality. I'd be surprised if Coburg really wants to pay for that. However, that's just one person as a member of 5. But I am very strong in that position, and I will be voicing it in the future, maybe as early as tomorrow, and then again on your future presentations in other areas.
Okay, understood.
Thank you. Larry, please.
I would wonder if we should make a motion to have that included back to the study. If Coburg's requesting this interchange to accommodate the increased development in the east, we should be included in that impact study to find out what the impact that the mayor has indicated about. So maybe we should pass a motion to have the MTO and the township of Coburg, the town of Coburg, incorporate a growth need study up there. Do you agree?
I
Make a
should,
motion.
I should turn to our clerk and ask for policy and process here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you may make a motion to include it. We do have a prepared motion to receive the presentation that we've heard today. You could add a clause making that request. I couldn't speak to the appropriateness of that or the timeliness, or even if it's something that could be done, but
Maybe could I ask this? Maybe we could consider that at our next council meeting, accept the presentation and have staff an opportunity to look at practice, policy, procedure. And then we could consider it at a later date.
Well, the only thing that I have to say about that is that you had already, brought that concern forward in months 2017,
19, I believe.
19, and it hasn't been done yet. So unless we put a request for it, if timing on it, then will we see it again in 2018 or 2025 or something like that? I just think it's important that we acknowledge that we want to have something done.
I appreciate that, the delay for an opportunity to review our practice and our policy might not be too long a delay. That's the only thing I'm suggesting. Mark, I believe you wanted to comment.
I was just gonna say that, I mean, I'd like to see it be referred to our, I keep calling it a roads committee, but I mean, our coordinator group, and then have that come from there to council. Because I don't see the need of having this study right today, because I mean, right now, the traffic's gonna be a lot different than it is when this bridge is gonna be built and different stages of when that bridge is gonna be built. So I think we have to have our wording properly, so that when that study's done, it might not be done 10, 15, 20 years from now. So that when it does affect those ratepayers to the north, they are included.
So the motion before us, thank you, Mr. Cook. The motion before us is that it's recommended that council of the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. That the presentation by MTO and Standing Consulting regarding the 401 interchange at Nagle Road be received for information. Could I have a mover? Moved by John, seconder. Mark, any further comments or questions? Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Okay, thanks very much.
Item 8 on our agenda, motion to go into public meeting. It is recommended the council of the Corporation of Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The council go into public meeting under section 34 of the Planning Act at 1:42 p.m. on January 17th, 2023. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by John, second by Larry. All those in favor? Carried. Sandra, I believe the floor is yours. We're dealing with the zoning bylaw 0422 for 8200 Jib Road, Kembar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If it please council, I'll go through the procedures for the public meeting. Following the planning report, which I'll be giving a synopsis of. The floor will then be open to the public. Please make yourself known to the clerk if you wish to speak. The order of speaking is as follows. Those persons in support of the application. Those persons in opposition to the application. Those persons seeking clarification. And the applicant will have opportunity to speak at the end should they desire. Please note that all persons wishing to speak to the application must address their comments and questions to the mayor. And we advise that before speaking, you must clearly and slowly state your name and address so that the clerk can ensure the record is complete. We also request that you come up to the podium and speak directly into the microphone. Following public input, members of council may make comments or ask questions as they deem necessary, and a bylaw may be entertained at a later point during the regular meeting of council. Council's reasons for their decision and the impact of public input will be provided by the council members. Those persons requesting a copy of the notice of decision must do so in writing to myself, the Secretary, the Planning Coordinator, or you may sign the file sheet in the lobby. I also note that Mr. Larry Bowman, the authorized agent for this application, is not available today. However, he has provided me a letter authorizing Ms. Gail Bowman to speak on his behalf should there be any questions. The application ZBA 0422 is from the Bowman Lawson family, 8200 Jib Road. It's recommended that the council enact as follows. They receive the report, members of the public be heard, and the zoning amendment request to be adopted, as it does appear to be in keeping with good planning principles. The notice of public meeting was circulated to the property owners on December 20, 2022, and the signs were posted on the property on December 20, 2022, in accordance with the Planning Act. Purpose and effect of the application is in fulfillment of condition of consent to sever for new lot creation under application B0422. This application is seeking to rezone the severed lot to urban residential first density, permitting a single detached dwelling. The proposal was fully reviewed with respect to the provincial policy statement and the township official plan when the application came forward to the Committee of Adjustment for the severance. The proposal is in keeping with development potential and probable possibilities in the settlement area designation of the township official plan. This is in the Canmore settlement area. I do note that there's a wellhead protection area on the far east corner of the parent property, but the new lot being created is well over 100 meters away from this wellhead protection area, so the protection area will not be impacted. It's the opinion of this department proposal for one new lot creation is in keeping with both the provincial policy statement and the township official plan. With respect to the zoning bylaw, the parent lands are zoned marginal agricultural with an environmentally sensitive area surrounding the water course. The proposed lot was specifically designed following discussions with the Conservation Authority to ensure that it is outside of the water course in the environmentally sensitive area. The proposed 1 acre lot, a little over 1 acre lot, does not meet the marginal agricultural zone provisions of 5 acres and 200 feet of frontage, but does of course meet the urban residential first density provisions of 1 acre and 150 feet of frontage. The retained parcel does exceed the minimum requirements of the marginal agricultural zone, so it does not need to be touched. And it's the opinion of this department that the proposal is in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. The agency comments received, none of the agencies had any concerns with respect to the actual zoning and creation of lot. The subject property, which is the parent property, 8200, does have a regulated area running through it. So the Conservation Authority does advise that any future development may require a permit to the parent property. Upon review of the application in relation to the provincial policy statement, township official plan, and the zoning bylaw, and the comments received from the outside commenting agencies, it's the opinion of this department that ZBA 0422 generally meets the intent of the planning documents, and a bylaw has been prepared for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. We have received the planning report. And even though we're adjusting the amendment or adjusting the agenda on the fly up here, I will turn to the public and ask, is there anyone here in support of the application? And if so, we would ask you come to the podium, state your name and your address, please. Okay, I'll ask if there's anyone here in opposition to the application. And I'll follow with, is there anyone here wishing clarification on the application? Thank you. Questions from council members? I'll start with you, John, if I could. Any questions? Larry? Bruce? Mark? None. Thank you. Yes, I asked for if there was anyone here in support, if you would like to speak. I did recognize you and did realize your position. Thank you. Okay, we need to rise from our public meeting and reconvene into regular council meeting. Okay, I need a motion to receive the report and the comments in the public meeting. Do I have a mover, please? Larry, moved by Larry, second by John. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Now moving to regular council. It is recommended that the Council of the Corporation Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The council rise from the public meeting under section 34 of the Planning Act and reconvene to a regular meeting of council at 1:50 p.m. January 17th, 2023. Moved by Bruce, seconded by Mark. All those in favor, carried. Thank you. Item 9, planning bylaws, which is the application we just had to report on. Bylaw 2023-01, zoning bylaw amendment 8200, Jib Road. It is recommended the Council of Corporation of Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. The bylaw 2023-01, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2001-58, our zoning bylaw, be given first, second, and third reading and finally passed the 17th day of January 2023. All those in favor? Sorry, mover and a seconder. John, Larry, all those in favor? Thank you, carried. Item 10 on our agenda, adoption of previous council and committee of the whole minutes. Thank you for reminding me, Sandra. We picked on John and Larry as a mover and seconder here, so I need reasons.
And obviously there is no impacts from public input. Thank you.
Moving on to item 10 on our agenda, council minute meetings. Council December 20th, 22 minutes. Recommended that Council of the Corporation Township of Hamilton acts as follows. That the minutes of the December 20th, 22 regular council meeting be adopted. Mover, please. Moved by Bruce, seconded by Mark. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. 10.2, committee of the whole meeting, January 10th, 2023. It's recommended the Council of the Corporation Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. That the minutes of the January 10th, 23 committee of the whole meeting be received for information. Mover and the seconder, moved by John, seconded by Mark. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 11 is business arising from the previous minutes. I see none. Committee reports. 12.1, motion, please, to receive committee minutes. Moved by Larry, seconded by Bruce. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 12.2, Anaraska Conservation Authority, November 17th and December 15th minutes. Bruce, motion to receive. Both sets of minutes, seconded by Mark. Any questions or comments? Okay. It's been moved, it's been seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Public Works. Item 13.1 on our agenda regarding Forest Hill Estates. Lucas, would you like to speak to this? Prepared motion in front of us that council receives report BWI 2023-01 regarding Forest Hill Estates entrance gates. And that council approves the removal and demolition of the Forest Hill Estates gates. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Mark, seconded by John. Questions?
Through you, Mayor Jib. Lucas, I was concerned with the photographs that were taken. If the gates come down, there's the mailbox right there on the edge of the road. I'm concerned about the plows removing the snow or debris hitting the mailbox, knocking them over. Is there any chance of that being moved backward?
We'll
or
have
to a different
to,
location?
through you, Mayor, we'll have to talk to Canada Post. We don't typically remove them. I mean, our snowplow operator is aware they are there and we'll address it at that time. If we have to relocate them, we'll have to talk to Canada Post and set them back for a few more feet.
Okay, just my concerns are they're very close to the road.
They are
as
very
they're-
close and we go around them now slowly, so we'll just have to continue to kind of watch that area.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Been moved, it's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Item 14 is rec and facilities, and I see nothing. Item 15, corporate services, 15.1, CAO 2023-01, strategic planning for the township of Hamilton, 2023 to 2026. It is recommended the Council Corporation Township of Hamilton acts as follows. That council received the report. Arthur, please.
Thank you, Mayor Jib. I put forward this report to give council a sense that while there's a number of other activities ongoing at the present moment, such as our budget planning and a number of other studies we have been working on and bringing forward, it was timely to also bring forward an outline of what we see as an upcoming strategic planning process to develop for the community plans. And we've outlined that that's going to be occurring over the next few months. I've identified when staff will be discussing and dealing with some of the issues, and also working sessions or seminar sessions with council over the course of the next few months, coming ultimately with a final resolution or a recommendation for a report late this spring. So if you had any questions on the timelines or any other issues, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Arthur. Any questions for Arthur? Comments? Larry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Arthur, we involve the public at the end of it. Should we not be including the public at the beginning of it? To get a sense of what the public feels is important for a strategic plan for the future. I know there was an initiative done in 2019, I think. It was called Focus 2020, which was a 30-year outreach plan following the failure of the amalgamation with Covert. And there was quite a few people involved in that, which was kind of an insightful piece. We're trying to try to find that. But I think, I think it's important to involve the public, before we create a strategic plan, rather than after we create a strategic plan. Sure, it's fine that we want to do things this way, but maybe they want to see it differently. So just a recommendation that maybe we should consider including the public in the format of the strategic plan. Just a comment.
Anything further, Larry? Arthur, would like to.
Just quickly, if I can reply to that, sure. That's a great suggestion through you, Mayor Jib. We could look at, for example, including a survey comment questions, kind of like we do with our budget, to get some input and advice or insights from the public from the start. I've sort of toyed with the concept of do you go out and have meetings, but I think partly what we're doing is we're getting the advice and information from staff, we're getting council's insight, and then we're releasing that. And before it's approved, we're also getting the community input as well. So it's not, it's one that would certainly, if we get a survey comments or input from the start, we could use that to build into the product as we go. So I could suggest that as being one way of garnering some of that input.
Thank you. Anything, John, Larry? Bruce, Mark? Bruce, please.
To you, Mr. Mayor, I always understood that the strategic plan is a living document. There's nothing in there that's cast in stone. So, further to what Arthur said, I believe that as we go forward, any input comes in, Bible, and we want it can always be added to strategic plans. But Larry's saying we need the input, and we do, but it needs to hold up the strategic plan because it has all.
Thank you, Bruce. That's more of a comment than a question, but I'm going to throw it your way again, Arthur, just to give a little further thought on that, if you would. Please.
So through you, Mayor Jim, I think, again, I appreciate the feedback, both comments so far. I think you're right at your Councillor Butters' remarks. The strategic plan is a living document. We revisit it, we provide updates to council, and we also would do updates and adjustments as circumstances change. 3 years ago, we didn't envision having a global pandemic, and we had to update our plans, processes, and some of our priorities during that period. And certainly, you need to be flexible and be able to deal with changing priorities and ideas. So yes, as the public comes forward, or as council members come forward with ideas, we'll be able to update those documents and make sure they're living sort of our proof that we can adjust and amend our plans and have at least a strategic direction going forward, but to be able to adjust the plans accordingly. So thanks for the comments.
Thank you, Arthur. Any further discussion, comments? Moving on, prepared motion that council receives report CAO 2023-01, strategic planning for the township of Hamilton, and that council directs the CAO to proceed with the approach outlined in the report. Mover, please. Bruce, seconder. Mark, any further questions or comments to the motion? All those in favor? Carried. (15.2) on our agenda. CAO report 2023-02, approvals under restricted acts provisions on the municipal act and bylaw 2022-27. Arthur, if you would, please.
You're pulling that one up, Orm. That's great. Thank you. So through you, Mayor Jib, I wanted to provide a short update to council to make sure they're aware of the restricted act provisions of the municipal act, which were invoked for us last year. The municipal act does provide authority for council to delegate authorities to the CAO. These are provisions, if certain provisions such as the lame duck provision of the municipal act are met. What these provisions presently prohibit is the appointment or removing of officers, dismissing of employees of the township, disposing of real property in excess of $50,000, or making sizable expenditures such as ones exceeding $50,000 as well. These acts are all restricted if certain circumstances, as in the number of councillors running for re-election, were met. And it also does not, however, restrict some of these acts if in fact that authority was delegated, which council did by passing bylaw 2022-27, and as well as if there were any emergency actions. So if we could scroll down just a tiny bit, the bylaw actually did provide the delegated authority to meet to, if in fact the lame duck provisions were met. And it also said that I was to report back to council on the any sort of actions taken. So the purpose of this report was to outline the 3 steps that were in fact decided upon. One was the single source purchase of the new fire truck from Dependable Emergency Vehicles. This was acquired for the purchase price of $881,000. I've outlined that in the report. The second item, if you could just scroll up a small amount, please. Emily, thank you. The second item was the relining of the June Catherine water lines. This contract was issued for the total value of $336,000, which was within the budgeted amount of $360,000. And the final project was the guardrail replacement program, which allowed for the repair of 3 cable guide rail installations in various locations of the township for a value of $68,749. So all 3 projects, which were approved by council under the 2022 budget, were in fact proceeded with last year. The procurement bylaw, as applicable, was followed as well, as far as whether RFPs or other the procedure bylaw was in fact followed. And there were no staffing implications on this, on any of the decisions that were required. And I think unless there's any other further requirements or any other questions on that, that just gives an update of those 3 sort of major activities that were undertaken in the fall of last year.
Thank you, Arthur. Any questions or comments? I know we don't have a motion. Go ahead. Okay. Could I have a motion, please, that council receives report CAO 2023-02, approvals under restricted acts provisions, municipal act, and bylaw 2022-27 for information. Didn't think I was going to read right.
It was a hard.
Mover, please. John, seconder. Seconder, Larry. Arthur, you'd like to speak to that?
Just through Mayor Jib, I will be bringing back an update on one of the items, and that is particular the purchase of the fire truck. We'll have a cleanup issue related to this, which is the rescinding of the previous bylaw, which was passed to make that acquisition. But I'll do that as a future point when we have more details related to the actual acquisition of that apparatus, and I'll do that at that time. Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Been moved, it's been seconded. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. No items under emergency services. Item 17, our agenda, communication and announcement. I presume these have been brought forward by individual members, and you might like to look at them independently. So what I will do is I will just go to the bullet point 17.2, which is the Marmora and Lake opposition to Bill 23. I don't know who brought this forward. Who would like to speak to it? Larry, please.
Actually, I brought them all forward regarding Bill 23. I think it would be important to continue to hammer the government, if you will, just to support these different communications from these different townships. The more we can voice our concerns and make it known, the more the government will get. So I would suggest that all those communications on Bill 23 be sort of addressed and supported.
The general nature is common
Absolutely.
throughout. So could I link 17.2, 17.4, 17.6, and 17.7, which all deal with Bill 23. I believe I'll turn to our clerk to see if I've done that right. Okay, 17.5, I'll add 17.5. I'll link those together with one motion. And Larry, would you be willing to make that motion, please?
I would think that goes all together.
And that we forward a,
Support the resolution to support.
okay. And a seconder to that motion? Thank you, Mark. Any further discussion? I guess I have one point. We're forwarding that to the province,
Yes.
forwarding it to the province. Any further discussion? All of, Bruce, yeah?
Do we need to respond to those municipalities too and say, we receive it and support it?
I understand the concept, but I wonder if it's kind of like a chain letter that just keeps flowing around and around and around. And whether there's ever an end to it type thing. Anyway, that's just a question that I have. Could I throw that to staff and copy that we've done the support to the province? Okay, sounds good. Okay with the mover and the seconder on that concept? Thank you, Bruce. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, now what do we have? We have one left. Where is it? 17.3 we have left. Look at our clerks. We've not included 17.3. Okay. 17.3 was a standalone topic. Lanark County Violence Against Women went through inquest resolution. We do have a prepared motion that the resolution from Lanark County regarding violence against women be supported by the Township of Hamilton and forwarded to the Police Services Board for consideration. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, John and Larry. Comments, questions? Larry, please.
Just, I wonder if we could include a note to Cornerstone and show their support for this. Cornerstone and Coburg is an organization which supports violence against women. And I think it might be appropriate to sort of indicate that we're supporting this initiative here.
I imagine we're all in supportive of that, Larry, but I'll turn to our clerk and say, best practice here, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could simply send the resolution and letter that we are preparing for the Police Services Board and Lanark County, and we could send it to Cornerstone.
Thank you. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Emily, you're sitting over there. We've got all the correspondence dealt with now, don't we? Thank you. Bylaws. Interim tax bylaw. Bylaw 2023-02. Interim tax 2023-0117. It is recommended the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. The bylaw 2023-02, being a bylaw to set the interim tax rates, be given first, second, and third reading. And finally, passed the 17th day of January 2023. Mover, please. Larry, seconder, Bruce. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. 18.2 on our agenda, being bylaw 2023-03, being our borrowing bylaw, and again dated January 1st, 2023. It is recommended Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The bylaw number 2023-03, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of funds be given first, second, and third reading, and finally passed the 17th day of January 2023. Mover, please. Larry, seconder, Mark. Comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Item 18.3, bylaw 2023-04, appoint acting fire chief Mike Robinson. It is recommended the council of the corporation of the township of Hamilton enacts as follows. With bylaw 2023-04 being a bylaw to appoint District Chief Michael Robinson as acting fire chief for the corporation of the township of Hamilton, be given first, second, and third reading, and finally passed the 17th day of January 2023. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Bruce. Seconder, Larry. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Media, I see no one present. Do we have anyone online? Emily? Thank you. Closed session. And I'll turn to our clerk again because I believe it's a good time to have a couple minute break. Would we break and come back and make the motion for closed, or what would be the proper or best?
In the interest of anyone who's watching online, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Mayor, moving the motion to go into closed and then having the reason.
Thank you. Motion prepared, motion to move to a closed session to discuss matters permitted under section 239(2). B, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. D, labor relations or employee negotiations. And F, advice that is subject to a solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Police Service Board appointment and human resource matters. It is recommended that council of the corporation of the township of Hamilton enacts as follows. That the regular council meeting held on January 17th, 2023, go into closed session at 2:16 p.m. under sections 239(2), B, D, and F. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Larry, seconder, Mark. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried.